hallelujah. And hey, let's throw in a hot, sweet ass on top of our hooray and hallelujah, because there's finally a brand new episode of Tom Rhodes Smart Camp. Sorry, I've been away for, Jesus, it's been a long time since I put out an episode. For a while, I've actually been thinking about changing the name of my podcast because, Smart Camp, who's interested in learning anything anymore? It seems like smart is the new stupid. It is not cool to know anything. It's kind of trendy to be a brute thug moron right now. So I was thinking about changing the name to Hooray for Humanity because I love people. I'm always looking for the best in the world. Just, I don't know. But these are weird, fucked up times. And that's, several reasons I haven't put out an episode in a while. I was dealing with some shit. It seems like I'm always trying to recover from something. I don't know when that ever ends in your life, but I'll elaborate a little bit more in a minute. But also on top of that, I've been afraid. There's just a lot of really dark, frightening shit that's happening in the United States and the world. And, man, it's hard to have faith in humanity, isn't it? Do we need to go into details? You know why everything's fucked up. But does anybody want to learn anything anymore? I mean, like, even, reading books seems like it's going to fall out of fashion. Like, if they don't burn all of them. I love reading books, but even myself, from TikTok and Instagram, and our attention spans are getting smaller and shorter. I've always loved talking about books that I'm reading on the podcast. I went back to this book called The Mysterian, and it's written by Kabir Helminski, and it's Rumi and the Secret of Becoming Fully Human. And the one thing that I got from this book when I read it a year or two ago, and I know I talked about it on the podcast, was it doesn't say this specifically in the book, but for some reason it gave me a different outlook on humanity. I mean, I'm pretty loving anyway, but if I found a judgmental idea coming into my mind, like if I saw a guy with neck tattoos or like a grotesquely overweight person, once that moment of judgment popped into my head, like, look at this guy, or, get a load of this person. Immediately the next thought coming in, because I read this book, I would say to myself, I love them. And I'm still doing that. When I find that shitty, negative, mean thought come to my mind about someone, I think to myself, I love them. It's hard to love some people, that's for sure. And forgiveness isn't always possible. But as an act of rebellion, let's read a highlight from the Mysterian at the beginning of our podcast. If the divine is the ultimate creative power, the creativity that brought us delicious fruits, fragrant roses, the spectacle of nature, and the beauties of human relationships, that same creative power has also brought us an inner life of even vaster dimensions, subtler beauties, spiritual virtues, and experiences both subtle and profound. If on the one hand, the birth from the physical womb leads us into the beauties of the sensory world, a second birth from the spiritual womb brings us into a spiritual universe of awesome beauty and meaning. Okay, take that. So when you read something and you learn something cool, just, think of that as an act of rebellion against all of the mean, hateful, evil shit that is happening in the world right now. But there's so much to be happy for, just for the fact that summer is finally here. Thank God. I hate winter. I'm a cold weather puss. And, I love swimming in pools. That's from growing up in Florida. The first women I ever kissed was after swimming in pools. So to this day, the smell of chlorine on a woman drives me crazy. If I ever come out with my own fragrance, I think it would smell something like chlorine and Hawaiian tropic coconut oil. But, the beginning of this year, especially, God, so much heavy stuff happened with there was the Malibu fires in Los Angeles, which I could, it's interesting. Like the George Floyd riots happened right on my street where I live in Los Angeles. And my mother and I were running back and forth from the balcony to the television to watch, to see what was happening. And then in January, when these fires wiped out Malibu and Altadena, I could see the Malibu fires in the distance from my apartment balcony. And I was dating a woman who owned a home in Malibu, and her house burned to the ground. She lost everything she owned. It's a pretty powerful mental fuck to lose your home and everything you own. And I actually went out, I think the Pacific Coast Highway, the road that goes through Malibu, I think it's still blocked off with a police military blockade. I went there twice with her after the Malibu fires, and it's eerie. I mean, like they used to be all these rich people's houses built right on the beach along the road, and you couldn't see the ocean, and now everything burned. And you can actually see the ocean as you drive down the Pacific Coast Highway, which is interesting. But her house, where it was up in the hilly area of Malibu, I mean, it was chilling to drive through Malibu and see, like, it looks like Nagasaki or Hiroshima. There's nothing else to compare it to. All the houses, not even chimneys standing, all the houses reduced to ash, as if like an atomic bomb had been dropped on Malibu. And it's interesting that the only thing that remained, there was burned out cars, and interesting to see, like, oh, that's a frame of a Porsche or a Mercedes, all these expensive vehicles that were just the skeletons of their former selves. What was interesting is everything was wiped out in Malibu except for the swimming pools. All of the swimming pools have remained in Malibu, and I think they should not rebuild in Malibu. It's my whole life, Malibu has always been on fire. There's always mudslides. There's always things happening, natural disasters every year. So I think they should turn Malibu into a state park and leave all of these former celebrity home swimming pools the way they are, clean them out, fresh chlorine, have, people taking care of the pools so you could swim in it. And then, you enter the national park and, you pay your admission, and then you rent a bicycle and you get a little map, and you can go swim in any of the former celebrity home swimming pools. Wouldn't that be a cool idea? Swimming Pool National Park in what was formerly known as Malibu. And you got your little bike, you got a little map. Hey, let's go swim in Cher's pool. Oh, hey, man, I wonder what Dr. Dre's pool looked like. Let's go swim in that one. Or who else? Mel Gibson. Who else lives there? Anyway, these are just random thoughts, and just trying to stay happy. And it's weird, man. This like funk, heavy sadness hung over Los Angeles for, I think until like middle of April. And now all these, their production is stopped. People are leaving Los Angeles. It's the opposite of Grapes of Wrath and the Dust Bowl, when all these Okies and people were moving to California. Just seems to be a mass exodus of people from California. So I'm wondering, should I stay? I don't know how much longer I want to be there. I've got ideas. I'm Ashna, my creative partner / best friend, and I wrote an animated movie. Brandy Denise and I, brilliant comedian, are working on a TV idea. So I'm giving it one last big effort before I fuck off, and I'm trying to consider where I should live. Where do you think I should live? Send me a message. Let me know. Well, that's kind of exciting that I get to figure out where do I want to live in the world, and it could be anywhere. So I'm going to take the next year or two and try and figure out what's going to be the next chapter of my life. But where I've been at this year, and like now, God, Los Angeles has got, the rioting downtown, I don't think it was that bad to send in the Marines and the National Guard, but there's just always some bullshit happening in Los Angeles. So back to the fires, and I was dating this woman who owned a house in Malibu. I've never dated a very wealthy woman in my life before, so that was kind of interesting. And her house burns to the ground in January, and so she's living with me in January and February and wearing my clothes, which I thought was very sexy, and she was Christian and very spiritual, and her attitude about losing her house, I was really impressed. She said, this is God's will, and this is why you don't get attached to material things. I was really impressed because, like, if I lost my book collection or my vinyl record collection in a fire or whatever, I would be really upset because I've spent my entire life collecting things. And I've got, great fun little knickknacks that I've bought all over the world. So anyway, I was really impressed with her attitude and the way she was, kind of spiritually elevated, looking at and accepting the fact that she had lost everything. But then something happened and it hit her. And I don't know, she broke up with me. And she moved out March 1st and got her own place. And I thought, wow, I had the first 2 weeks of March off. So I cashed in frequent flyer miles and I went to Vietnam. A friend of mine was there in January and posting photos and stuff, and I saw it and I thought, damn, I love Vietnam. And I haven't been there in like 7 or 8 years. So I spent a week in Hanoi and a week in Ho Chi Minh City, the former Saigon. So I had gotten when I got my ticket through Delta, this little window popped up about getting the visa for Vietnam. And actually I needed 2 visas because I went to Hanoi and then I went to Bangkok and then I went to Saigon. So I needed 2 visas for Vietnam. And a week before I went over there, and I did it like, I don't know. I had plenty of time. I did it like a month in advance. And anyway, I get over there. I land in Hanoi. I had been traveling for 24 hours. And it turns out that, and I got an email from this visa processing third-party company, because normally when I've done it, I've gone through the Vietnamese embassy in Los Angeles and gone there personally and filled out the papers and stuff. So they said that one of the visas was still processing. So I just thought it must be the second visa, not the first one. So I fly over there. And then at passport control in Hanoi, they say you don't have a visa. The second one had been approved first. And they send me, it's like 10:30, 11 p.m. at night. And thank God they had a visa on the spot office area. And I go and I explain to the man, what happened and, honest mistake. And the guy tells me 4 times, no, I'm sorry. You're not going to be able to get a visa and you're going to have to be on the next plane back to Seoul, Korea, which is where I had just I flew from LA to Seattle, then to Seoul, then to Hanoi. And I'm telling the guy, please, sir, Vietnam is really important to me. Please, sir. And I'm just being as kind and humble. And I felt like I was going to cry. I mean, I was exhausted, and all I wanted to do was get to the hotel and sleep. And so and it's me talking to this one clerk man at the visa upon arrival's desk, and then at the next clerk over, there was this man from Israel, and he was like a tour guide, and he had 50 people from Israel all sitting in this waiting area, right where this little desk was. And this Israeli guy is yelling at the top of his lungs at this guy. He's going, "This is bullshit. And I've been here before, and you can get a visa on the spot for $50." And he's just like yelling at this man. And so the guy I'm talking to, I'm pleading my case, and he goes, "Listen, I'll let you talk to my supervisor." So this guy comes over, and I'm looking him in the eye, and I'm like, "Please, sir, Vietnam is very important to me. I came here 30 years ago, and I filmed a highlight for a travel show. I didn't mention that my father had fought in the war. And I said, I've come here to spend a lot of money, and I'm just being as polite and humble as I can be. Meanwhile, this Israeli guy is yelling at his guy next to me. So the supervisor leans into me, and he says very softly, he says, "In Vietnam, your attitude is very important, and you have a good attitude. So I'm going to give you this visa." And he gave me the visa. Meanwhile, the Israeli guy and his group of 50 people were put on the next plane back to Korea. So, it's one thing I've learned in my travels, and I know I've said this before, that like the best way to get upgraded at a hotel or an airline or in anything is to just be kind. If you're an asshole and you get loud with people, you're going to be rejected every time. So it was a treat to go. I felt kind of, uh, I mean, I thought I was in a good relationship. I get dumped as a result of the fires and this woman dealing with a lot of shit in her life. So I needed a little break. And Hanoi was amazing. The food is great there. My friend Dan Dockery, who runs the English language comedy, if you remember, he gives motorcycle tours of the north of Vietnam. And the last time I was there, I went on a motorcycle ride with him. I had learned how to ride a motorcycle just to do this trip with him. And I was 45 miles north of Hanoi, going up a windy mountain road when the motorcycle went out from under me because it was dirt and sand on the edges that I got too close to. And the motorcycle went out from under me. And I slammed against my head hit the pavement of the road. And fortunately, I was wearing a good helmet. And I just skinned up my elbow. But I thought it was interesting because, my father had flown helicopters in Vietnam and he was shot down. And that was such a important event in my father's life, which I have only realized in the last 10, 20 years how important that also was to my life. Because the bravery that my father showed when he was flying helicopters in Vietnam, and he'd have to fly down into these zones where soldiers were stuck on the ground and getting shot and killed, and then his aircraft was taking tons of bullets and just getting shot at from every angle. The bravery to do that repeatedly, I know helped me as a stand-up comedian, especially in the early years when I was like terrified beginning. And then as I've traveled around the world, to be able to go in any situation, follow any comedian, not that I haven't bombed a few times, but just to not be afraid or just face the fear and go in. and go on stage in any situation and deliver the goods and be entertaining and be funny and not let fear cripple my mission and my dream of going anywhere in the world and making people laugh and being a comedian. So that was really awesome. And then I go to Ho Chi Minh, Saigon, and there's a 22-year-old comedian named Jack Nugget. And Jack Nugget gave me a tour. I was there for like 4 or 5 days, and for 3 of those days, he picked me up on his scooter at the hotel and took me around to all the delicious food things that he knows. And that's the best thing about Vietnam and Thailand is the food is incredible. And everything is like $1.50, $2, $3 at the most. You know what the French people did with art and literature, I think that's what the Vietnamese and the Thai people have done with food. Just elevated it to like the most supreme, amazing, mind-blowing artwork. The way they present and combine food, like in Thailand, the Thai chili basil combination. That's my favorite food seasoning of all time. I could eat a dog turd with Thai chili basil and pepper. So anyway, I had a great time in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. There's a street there called Book Street. That's just all these little bookshops and sellers, and it was a nice little break for my brain and my fragile little banged up heart. And my mother, she doesn't understand why I or anyone would vacation in Vietnam, and she always says they murdered all of they killed everyone we know. So my mom remembers, the Vietnam War and all the people that were lost that were friends of hers and my father's. And it's interesting. I'm driving around on the back of Jack Nugget's scooter. I didn't realize that's what I really needed. I needed to just ride on the back of Dan Dockery's motorcycle in Hanoi and Jack Nugget's scooter in Ho Chi Minh City and just enjoy the sights and just the beautiful chaos of how the traffic flows and there's no stoplights and how people don't run into each other. It is really beautiful. But excuse me, Jack Nugget, we're driving by the American War Crimes Museum in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. And it's funny, I remember going there when I went there in 1994, in September 1994, to film Viva Vietnam for Comedy Central, which aired in April 1995 for the 20th anniversary of the end of the war. So now they just had the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. Viva Vietnam was 30 years ago. And I remember going to that American War Crimes Museum, and they got, helicopters, the Hueys that my dad flew, and American jets, all in the outdoor yard area. And it's a pretty heavy museum. And I remember going there, and I didn't want to see any of that stuff this time. I just wanted to eat nice food and laugh. And Jack Nugget, this young, wonderful, beautiful soul comedian, tells me as we're driving past the War Museum, he goes, because he's 22 years old. And he says, we have the younger generation in Vietnam, we have no memory of the war whatsoever. He goes, that's ancient history. So it's interesting how something that can affect so many lives in America, and these people have moved on. They've had 3 wars with China since we left. So I haven't put out an episode in a while, and I wanted to talk about Vietnam, and I wanted to pay tribute to my father because I'm going to put I'm putting out this episode on June 21st. And June 21st is my father's birthday. And he was born in 1938, and he was in Vietnam in 1969. And the fact that he flew helicopters in the Vietnam War, it was a big part of his identity. And he would always get together with the Vietnam Veterans Helicopters Pilots Association every 4th of July. And June 21st, it's the summer equinox. It's the first day of summer. And then some years it's also Father's Day, which is always sort of a painful day for me because I don't have my father anymore. But my dad is the reason I'm a comedian. And I didn't realize that his fearlessness as a helicopter pilot really helped me break through my fear as a comedian. Just knowing that in my DNA and my soul in the back of my mind that he was a true American badass. And my father is a decorated war hero. And even though he was killed by a drunk driver in Anaheim in 2009, my father is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., which is where my family's from. It's where I was born. My father was born there. And my father wanted to be buried in Arlington. And you have to be a true badass to get buried in Arlington now. You have to be a war hero because it's full. So when Viva Vietnam aired in April 1995, wow, that was 30 years ago. Unbelievable. We got interviewed for the Washington Post by the entertainment writer Rich Leiby. And it came out on April 15th, 1995. That's the day the war ended, and that's the day that this special aired on Comedy Central. So the man who interviewed us, and the story about the special, and me and my dad went with this reporter to the Vietnam Veterans Wall in Washington, D.C. It was the cover of the entertainment section for the Washington Post. And we really bonded with Rich Leiby, and I became lifelong friends with him. I've been friends with him for 30 years. He actually came to my father's funeral in 2009 at Arlington, and that really touched my heart. And then sometime late last year, Rich Leiby was looking through some storage stuff, and he found a cassette of the interview that he did with my dad about his time in Vietnam. And I was sitting there. We're in a restaurant, so and you can hear a waitress come up. Rich Leiby gave me this cassette tape that he interviewed us so he could write this article, and he found it. And it's so great to hear my father's voice again. It's in a restaurant, so there's some restaurant noises, and then you can hear the waitress come up. And my dad makes a smart-ass comment to the waitress, which is interesting because we never ate in a restaurant ever without my father making a smart-ass comment to the server, whoever it was, about something. He always had, and it's funny, I remember in my life growing up, I remember sometimes being embarrassed that my dad would always have a comment for the waiter or waitress. And now, excuse me, now that my father is passed, I would give anything in the world to be slightly embarrassed by my father in a restaurant making a comment to a waitress. But my dad was funny. He had funny comments for everyone. It's great, this thing that Rich Leiby says at the beginning, I'm going to leave on, about we live in a imperfect world of chaos and our only survival mechanism is humor, something like that. And it's great hearing my father talk about this incident where he almost dies and he saved these two soldiers and he gets all these medals. And he's a decorated war hero, and he's talking about this horrible near-death experience, and he's laughing. It's really great to hear my father's laugh again. I'm so grateful that I have this cassette. I digitized it, and I'm gonna play about 10, 15 minutes of it where he's explaining and he's telling the whole story about how he got shot down in Vietnam. And this is a tribute to my father. And I want to thank Rich Leiby for finding this cassette tape. But here's a special little treat for my father's birthday, him talking about him getting shot down when he was flying a helicopter in the Vietnam War on September 24th, 1969. Enjoy this little slice of Tom Rhodes and American history.
I also believe that most humor arises out of the fact that we live in an irrational universe of random chance. And humor is one of our defense mechanisms.
It is.
If you didn't laugh, some guy told me the other day, you'd go crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the kind of way, I mean, I understand, this piece is not about McNamara, but
No.
there's a juncture there.
My best friend I grew up with in Washington lives in College Park, Maryland right now.
Yeah.
He's an ex-DC cop. We met as teenagers in a fight. We were fighting each other.
Right.
But we became best friends. It's usually that's how it happens. After you're in a fight with somebody, you become really good friends.
Right.
And it's the same with the Vietnamese now. I mean,
Right.
we fought them and everything, but now it's time, we had our fight. Let's make up. I think they really want to be friends with us. There's no reason not to, except for 1,621 MIAs, which when I got shot down, one of the MIAs was in my helicopter.
Right.
They still don't know what happened to me.
Really? And there's 1,621, you said?
I believe that. Isn't that how many, Jay?
I just read the figure. It was up to 2,200. I just read that 1,600 figure in the last 2 or 3 days.
Well, somewhere around that. Tom's wearing his MIA bracelet all the time.
Your, the day you were shot down was when?
September 24th, 1969. Day before Dave's birthday. That's how I know.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
And you, I know you're hurt physically, legs, back.
Well, eventually,
At what height were you coming down
I had,
from?
go ahead, you can see it, Sharon. It's not that ugly. That's my Purple Heart. But I ended up with back surgery as a result of the crash.
Mm-hmm.
But we were over some jungle, and these special forces guys were surrounded by NVA, who were really pissed off because they had called in Cobras and the Air Force and everybody had been bombing these people all day, and they were really pissed. And four of the Green Beret were wounded.
Right.
So we were trying to get them out. So we were hovering right on top of the trees. This is Triple County jungle. So we lowered the ropes, and finally, this took all day. We got shot out of there twice. I had a first crew chief took a round through the leg,
Right.
getting in and out. We go back. New gunner, new crew chief, right? That's why I don't know this guy's name. He was a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And Khan made this thing, hey, go with them, and he jumped in.
Right.
And we go back, and we get these four wounded on these ropes.
Right.
And we're taking off, and we took around, I think a 50 cal round through the engine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're, I'd say, about 200 feet. And we're just almost clear, right? Doing about 50 knots, just easing out of there. All of a sudden, we're falling. And I only had two thoughts. Your life's supposed to pass before you.
Right.
Men, in these kind of helicopter crashes, you die. Nobody lives in these things.
Right.
I thought, I'm going to die, number one. And the second thought was, I hope it's quick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be laying there, with the engine on top of me or something,
Right.
That's my two thoughts. And we did an auto rotation, but we're low and slow, so we couldn't do a good one. And the thing that saved our life, there was a little stream running through this jungle. Mm-hmm. And when you do an auto rotation, that's how you emergency landing in a helicopter.
Right. Now this is where you're actually disabling the rotor? Or?
The rotor is still turned,
right,
because it has a freewheeling clutch. What you do is you turn the nose into the wind and change the attitude of the aircraft. And you're actually falling. but
Right.
you're easing the fall as best you can. You bottom your pitch, and the blades are like this, so then when you get to the bottom, about 20 feet off the ground, you pull your pitch in, and it sucks the air, and you can save your life.
Get a little cushion there.
Yeah.
Right.
But you have to be high and fast to do it right.
Right.
We were low and slow. Anyway, I see this stream, and I sort of maneuvered to try to get the guys in the ropes into the stream.
I was
The
gonna
guys
ask
are
you about
still on the
that.
road.
Yeah, oh yeah, all four of them are hanging like puppets hanging off his aircraft. So I'm trying to maneuver, and you doing auto rotation again. You can't maneuver. Right? You got to go to your spot. And but I didn't want to drag them through the trees, so I maneuvered over. Consequently, last 50, 60 feet was free fall, splat, and these guys turned out to be Cambodian special forces, except one. One was an American guy with them.
So there were 3 Cambodian special forces.
And one American guy. And one of the guys were killed on the road. So when we crashed, I was in shock. I get out. Now I look at my co-pilot. He's hanging in the straps, right? And he's unconscious. I thought he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I look in the back, and I can't see anything. So I get out, and my gunner behind me, as we're falling, had braced his feet on my seat. With the crash, he laid down and put his feet on my seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed the transmission crushed him because I couldn't see. You know, just
You came forward when I hit the tree.
yeah. So we're laying like this on the right side. So I get the door open and I squeeze out, and I'm hearing they're shooting at me, man. And I'm like, I can't get my helmet on. I'm in shock. You know, I'm like, woo-hoo. So I finally get it off.
He's laughing about it.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. I was a little upset. So I throw this helmet into the. And this is the one day I didn't take my 45 with me, Jack, because you know how I got in the seat, it was so uncomfortable. So I left it in my locker. So here I'm unarmed on the ground. I'd been in country 5 months. That day I said, I ain't carrying that goddamn thing on me today. I never used it. I was afraid somebody would steal it all the time. So anyway, yeah, I looked at it, and my co-pilot's coming too. And this front pane is broken on the helicopter.
Right.
So I go over there. I'm Jim Brady. I look great. I'm Mark. I back up a little bit. So
Put the vest on?
the chicken plate had Velcro over your back.
Right.
So yeah, it came right off. So, yeah, I took the chicken plate off. And so I go in to try to, I unhooked this guy out of his harness and everything. And I'm trying to drag him out of the window.
Right.
And he comes to, and he starts fighting me. He wants to go out the door. And I'm trying to pull him out the window.
This was your co-pilot.
Yeah, and I look in the back of this airplane. It's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's 1,000 pounds of JP4 fuel that's going to explode at any second. And this guy's wrestling me, right? So I said, shit on, I let him go.
She can feel it.
He won that one.
Mm.
So he goes out the door, but he's all banged up. I mean, he looks like he's been in a wreck, you know, which he had. I mean, a car wreck.
Right.
And the crew chief comes around, staggering around. He was all screwed up too. And so I told him while I'm wrestling with this lieutenant, I'm wrestling with this lieutenant, I said, go see if you can find the gun. Because I couldn't see him. So he stumbles off. He come back after a few minutes after I'm with this wrestling match. He said they couldn't find him either.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the MIA I'm talking about. This guy, I don't know his name. He's a replacement guy.
Mm.
He's with me an hour and a half. And this happens. And he's dead probably. He's gone forever. Nobody knows his name, what happened to him. Or did he jump out? He could be in the bushes, you know, laying there. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
These are the kind of people that we want accountability for.
Sure.
See. So anyway, in this little clearing, it was just a room. A South Vietnamese helicopter landed about 30 yards from where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And the old H-34s with the big door well in it, and there's a South Vietnamese guy sitting in the door well with an M60 holding these people down.
Right.
That's why we're doing this.
Right.
And I don't realize. So I get these other two guys.
I need to check and see if our photographer is wandering.
I told the desk to tell him we're back here.
Oh, good, okay.
He's back in that room where nobody is.
Oh, good.
So he's expecting, he knows to ask for you and to send him back here.
Should be here.
So anyway, I
Check
just,
again about
I get these two guys and they look so bad and I look so good.
Right.
So I get them like this and I drag them to this and I push them up into this other H-34. And the guy's shells are hitting me in the back of the neck, these guys. And I thought I was being shot.
Right.
So we get up in there and one of the crew in this South Vietnamese helicopter goes out to check the guys on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, you can't believe the noise. Cobras and everything is scraping and exploding, and trees are falling. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs to this pilot, get this motherfucker out of here.
Right.
And
Get this what out of here?
You know, the bad word, the MF are out of there at night. And you cannot, I can't hear myself. I sound like a noise.
Right.
Yeah, with this kind of,
Thank you. I'm sorry.
My didn't ask?
what mayonnaise, where are you from?
Hi.
Bring the man mayonnaise.
She was Thailand.
But this is what, Richard, I have time to, I'm hearing all this again, the fabric of this aircraft, you're hearing the zzz, zzz,
Right.
stuff ripping through it. And I finally looked at my leg, and then I see all this blood all over my left leg.
Mm-hmm.
All this time, I had no idea that I had a problem. So I sort of, big chicken that I am, I sort of eased the pants up real easy.
Right.
And I finally looked down there and the bone and everything was all hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea. I'm doing all this totally shocked. And I really wanted to run into the bamboo and Lake Forest Gump and just haul ass.
Right. Right.
Too many witnesses. You see that something's wrong? So then I started, and medic! And this South Vietnamese guy threw me on them bandages, and I put a bandage over it. And we got out there, and it was really interesting. We got to a place called Doc To, which was our little base camp.
Just to back you up a minute, do you know what, of the four, you said one of the guys died?
One of them was
Cambodia?
killed or missing.
One, oh.
No, the pilot, the gunner.
Thank you.
Right.
The Cambodians on the ropes. Oh, that's the other thing. This little, little South Vietnamese guy, while we're waiting, he brings the American off the rope that survived.
Mm-hmm.
This little redheaded guy, mean as a snake, he brings him, pushes him up in there. This guy, it's a 20-minute flight from this place. We were in Laos.
Right.
To Doc To. And this guy finally takes off, right?
You were in Laos?
Yeah, we were in Laos, where these, you see the Green Berets
Tom, we were never in Laos. What are you talking about?
I understand.
The Green Berets were over there trying to catch these North Vietnamese sneaking down these trails. That's how it
Right.
So, anyway, this guy, the little redheaded guy, this Green Beret guy, pushes him on. We take off. It's a 20-minute flight to Doc To. And it's just like in the movies. The guy's laying there on the floor, this old H-34, and I'm laying there buying, well, I smoke Kents. I was a big sissy about smoking, even then.
Right.
So I offered the guy a Kent, right? And he could, he can hardly talk. He's all banged up. He's pointing at his pocket. So just like in the movies, man, he got camels in it, no filters, right?
Oh, no.
So I pulled a camel out and I light it for him. And all the way on this little flight, I'm putting the camel in his little lips. Oh, John Lee. So we get there. All these guys go back to their units because they were just contusions and abrasions. I had to have a skin graft because my leg was ripped open.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do skin grafts in Vietnam because
Right.
of the climate, so they sent me to Japan, and I eventually got medevac because that's when Nixon was bringing people home. He was really bringing the wounded home. what I was doing. And
Wait a minute, you came home after 6 months?
5 months.
I didn't know that.
$1 million.
You never got an R&R or anything, huh?
No, I didn't. I'm still mad at that. They owe me an R&R. But anyway, the interesting thing about this flight, this South Vietnamese old H-34 helicopter that we used in Korea that we had given to the South Vietnamese, it made this flight somehow, this 20-minute flight, and it landed. They told me the next day that the engine quit when we got to Dak To. And this thing had to be craned out of there. It was so shot up. How it made this flight to get me back to Dak To, nobody knows. It was a Swiss cheese, this thing. Because I could hear it. Bullets just ripping through this thing.
Wow.
And the guy was, so anyway, that's my war story, and I'm sticking to it.
And a damn good one.
Thank you. And I got a distinguished flying cross for that.
A Distinguished Flying Cross? And Bronze Star?
No,
Or Purple Heart?
Purple Heart. If you spent the night in the 71st Evacuation Hospital in Playco, you got a Purple Heart. But you would not spend the night there unless you deserved a Purple Heart. I was in the bed and Major came in and pinned that thing on my pajamas.
Wow.
That's where you get Purple Heart. You ever had a Purple Heart before? No, sir. You got one now? All right.
A lot of ceremony involved. No, son, just here to give you your medal.
But you know what? It's funny when I didn't know about the DFC and all that. I got to Fort Meade. I was back on active duty and I had Tom and all of them living on post. Colonel Foote called me. He said, I want you to put on your dress uniform and come on over here. Bring your family. I didn't know what he was talking about. I got a picture of you and all this stuff. And they presented me with a Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with a V device, for another mission that I was on. And that's something serious. You ever hear them read those things? You know, above and beyond and all that, when the blue words they throw in there for the good of the unit.
So, on balance, I hear you are, okay, put it roughly, fighting a not only futile, but at that point illegal war since you were in Laos. Yet you still,
I was making a house call.
right, you weren't, right, I know. And nobody could say, I'm not gonna do this, or they didn't, I mean, that's the way it was.
We had to go get them.
Right, you had to.
Yeah.
Right, I understand that, but it seems to me what my follow-up here is that you still take a measure of personal satisfaction and pride out of what you did.
Absolutely.
Right.
The greatest pride was rescuing Americans who were in this position. And I'm sure Jacob felt the same way. We worked for the South Vietnamese quite a bit. Remember I told you we had different mission every day?
Right.
But when I would pull some Americans out, and I'm on the way back from these guys being in hell, and I turn around, the other pilot's flying, and I turn around and look back there, and I got 6 GIs back there.
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
That's...
And somebody comes up and says, I wouldn't have your job for anything in the world. And I say, I wouldn't have yours.
Right.
Yeah, well, you told me that guys just loved helicopter pilots because that was saving their ass.
I was walking.
That was
Whenever I tell people, when I'm talking to veterans, I say my dad was always,
right. So you have a built-in sort of
Yeah.
comfort zone.
I was in Greenbelt. I was in Greenbelt with my friend up there, and we were walking through the mall, and there was a Vietnamese black guy.
Right.
Collecting money for some Vietnam cause, And I told him I was a helicopter pilot. And this guy, African Americans tend to phrase things in a way that we don't think of. And I told him I was a helicopter pilot. He said, if there's one man in this world that I'd kiss his ass,
And there it is. A little slice of Tom Rhodes history, little slice of American history. It's so great to have this recording of this cassette tape. We tried to clean it up as much as we can, the sound. But it's so great for me to hear the laugh of my father and just hear his voice again really makes me happy. But to hear him talk about this event that was, so important, impactful in his life, this helicopter crash where he was shot down, and it also had a big influence on my life. It's that part of the story where he's shot down and the helicopter is falling, and he has to do this maneuver. So imagine you're a pilot of a helicopter in Vietnam, and you're taking all this, fire and the helicopter, you're dropping like a stone. And then when you're like 20 feet from the ground, you reverse the propellers or whatever, the blades, the chopper blades. And he said it's called an auto rotation, I think. But imagine you got to do this maneuver when you're like 20 feet, you're falling. And then when you're 20 feet from the ground, you like reverse the chopper blades or whatever, and it just kind of gives you this soft cushion before you hit. And that's what saved his life. And I remember my father telling me that, like, in flight school and training, that this maneuver they did over and over and over again. And it's just the fact that he stayed cool under so much pressure with so many lives at stake, and he did this maneuver, and him and his co-pilot ended up living. It's remarkable. I mean, for me, it's one of the most impactful stories of my life, because that has always helped me to stay cool and calm and focused in the most chaotic moments. And, my father was my hero, and today is his birthday. I'm celebrating him with this episode. He wasn't a perfect man. He wasn't nice to my mom in many ways, but to me, he was my hero. My father's the reason I love baseball. He's the reason I love stand-up comedy. He took me to, I remember driving around Washington, D.C. as a little kid, and he was listening to Richard Pryor cassette tapes. And in the early 1970s, there was no seatbelts in cars. So as a little kid, I remember standing beside him as he drove with my arm around him on his shoulders. And just that feeling of his shoulders shaking when he laughed, it was magic. And my father took me to see my uncle when I was 11 years old, do stand-up comedy, and that's when I decided to be a comedian. My father drove me to my first 2 open mic nights. The first one, he sat in the car and waited while I went in with my fake ID and pretended like I was old enough to get in. I had a very, really special relationship with my father. I miss him. He was like my best friend. Before the internet and Google, my father was my encyclopedia. I could ask him. He just knew everything. I could ask him, what was the Peloponnesian War about? And my father could break it down and explain it to me. He just had a wealth of valuable knowledge. And I remember, God, when I lived in Los Angeles in the early 2000s, after I had moved back to the United States from Amsterdam, I was kind of broke, and I was living in Koreatown. And my dad was living in Anaheim. And he would drive up from Anaheim. He would pick me up at the airport whenever I arrived, or he would wake up before sunrise and drive from Anaheim to Koreatown in Los Angeles and take me to the airport to save me the $60, $80, whatever the taxi cost at the time. And, whenever I arrive at LAX, I always see at the arrivals, I can picture my dad pulling up in his minivan, and how happy I was always to see him throw my luggage in the back, jump in. I'd give him a kiss on the cheek and a side hug. And then as he drove me home, I would tell him all about my adventures of wherever I had just been, in Australia or Europe or, Atlanta, Chicago, Kansas City. It was really a special relationship. And, when you lose a loved one, especially losing a parent is really difficult, especially, if you had a close relationship with them. The most valuable things are like photos and videos that you have of them. And, I encourage all of you to do an audio recording or video, like just do like a little interview or conversation with the people you really love in your life, because when they pass, it's invaluable to be able to hear the sound of their voice. And, like this recording of my father, just to hear his laughter again. I thought my dad had the greatest laugh. And anyway, June 21st is a really important day. It's my father's birthday. It's the first day of summer. It's the longest day of the year. And, some years it's also Father's Day. And I remember my dad feeling kind of cheated when it was his birthday and Father's Day on the same day. But I think it's one of the most coolest days of the year, June 21st. And the longest day of the year with the most sunlight. And it's my dad was a Cancer. I'm a Capricorn. I always get along with Cancers. And I don't know, some kind of, I don't study the stuff, but there's some kind of connection that, I know Capricorns get along great with each other. And then also, I've always gotten along great with Cancers. And today, my father would have been 87 years old. And anywho, I'm really happy to record again and pay tribute to my father. There's so many great stories. I remember one time he picked me up at the airport and I was so stressed, and I forget what was worrying me at the time. I'm bouncing my knee, I'm chewing my nails, and I was smoking one cigarette after another. And my father said, Tom, listen, life is short and you have to find a way to be happy. And it's really true. And it's great advice. And, I went through, some difficult depression, heartbreak a couple years ago, and I finally feel happy again. And I think I'll, try and start recording my podcast more often. And I'm really excited that today's the first day of summer officially. And my last 2 summers kind of stunk because I was all sad and heartbroken and shit. And I really feel happy. I love myself again. So I'm really excited about what's coming in this summer. And, the world has gone crazy as always, and shit is tense everywhere. But my advice to you is the advice that my father gave to me. And that is, life is very short. So you gotta find a way to be happy. Enjoy yourself in all things. And like I said, and baseball is the game of summer. And I love comedy. I love baseball because of my father. And I grew up in the Orlando, Florida area, and we had spring training baseball. And my father used to take me out of school. He would say I had a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment, and he would take me to a day baseball game. And I always thought that was really cool. My dad and I kind of had this, we were like, I don't know, not criminals, but rules were always kind of a suggestion for my father. And I remember one time we even got me out of school to go to Cocoa Beach, where the Houston Astros used to have their spring training, because the Yamamori Giants from Tokyo were playing that day. And Sadahara O, the Babe Ruth of the Japanese League, was the manager of the Giants. And I remember my father got me out of school just to go, so we could go look at this great man, this man who was the Babe Ruth of the Japanese League. So, like things like that I got from my dad, just like having heroes, taking pilgrimages, and, laughing no matter what your circumstances are, and just finding the humor in it. My dad kind of always eased the troubles and the worries, like whatever was happening, he always had a joke or a smart-ass remark, and I love him eternally. So that is today's episode of Tom Rhodes Smart Camp, and I love you all dearly. Thank you for listening. Hooray for humanity.
Jose, can you hear that Tom Rhodes is here? T-O-M, I show. T-O-M, I show. Show.